Hello everyone, this is Denise from Connectarium. Thanks for being here. I'm here today to talk to you about the great conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn, which happened on the December 21st. I was meant to translate this video that I did first in my language, in Portuguese, and now into English to share with you, since I had already done the material. It's a little bit in more detail for you to understand this big change in society. So I'm going to share the content with you. It happened at 0 degree of Aquarius. Always encouraging you to know where the degrees and where the big transformations are falling into your chart. There is a video here on the channel explaining how to make your chart, how to calculate freely on internet. Okay, so and also think about where it falls into your chart in a way to reflect on your personal entrepreneurship. How can you apply those reflections into your life, act and co-create with the universe? Life is not ready. We are co-creating all the time, especially in Aquarius. We're going to talk about that. It's a lot about creativity. So think about your life, your singularity, what you have to deliver to the world to apply all this, okay? So we are facing at the moment, we are transitioning from the Capricorn energy, where we had a very important conjunction in 2020, which, by the way, mirrored everything we have been through this year. So the great conjunction between Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter in Capricorn was a big, different energy from the one we're going to face now, since Jupiter and Saturn entered Aquarius. So that's the transitioning. It's like we are now from the pain of delivering a child to being rebirth. So to rebirth, to be born again. So it's a regeneration process. It is, we all know it can, and it was painful. So it's important to understand this big transition and why it's rare and why it's different now. So the homework is redesign yourself. Right? So Aquarius is all about reinventing, creativity. Find your way, your particular and authentic way of being. Our agenda for today. So we're going to talk about the cycles, Jupiter and Saturn cycles, the symbols. Where are we coming from this Capricorn energy? The great difference and changes in the dialect between these two signs. Understanding Aquarius from its opposite sign, which is Leo. The correlation with the network theory. So I encourage you to stay until the end so you can see some insights about how we are changing into a network kind of environment instead of power and control. What should we expect from this conjunction in the spirit of time, and some bibliography that I would like to share with you. So, why is it different now? Why we're talking so much about the great conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn? By the way, first of all, it's called a great conjunction because in the traditional astrology, prior to the discovery of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which is kind of recent if we think historically, the last planet that we could see from naked eye was Saturn, right? So those were the two last ones, traditionally speaking. So when they meet was a big thing. They are the two social planets, very important ones. But still, they meet every 20 years, so it's not that rare, right? What is different now is they haven't met in the sign of Aquarius since 1405. That's the first point. The other point is that usually they meet in the same element for about 200 years. So we are finishing a period of 200 years in the earth element and starting a 200-year period in the air element, the earth element and air element right now. Except for 1981, when it had a passage through Libra, which is an air sign. It happens when they are finishing one element, they kind of step into the next one and then go backwards a little bit and then enter finally the next element, which is now. So we're starting a 20-year period when they meet. So it marks, right? It highlights the 20-year period, but also highlights a 200-year period where it is in the air element. So the two, we're going to talk about the very big differences between the two elements, okay? And also they met at 0 degree. It's also interesting, the degree 0, really resetting the energy, the very first degree. So 0 point, rebirth, reset, rethink, put our level of consciousness in a different perspective. So we are beginning this very big news cycle. And also it happened, I was forgetting, it happened during the day of the solstice, right? 21st of December, when we're changing seasons, is another very important point in nature. So we are going from an age of productivity in Earth, it's all about productivity, into a cycle of creativity in the air element, which is all about communication, exchanging, mental, technology. And I'm adding here that it's very important, I would say vital, that we add to this equation the importance of discernment. We need to choose from now on how we feed our minds, because we're going to have too much information available, even more than what we have today. So we have to take into consideration, we are entering, I'm going to make other videos about that, but we are entering 2021, and the two rulers of Aquarius, which are Saturn from the traditional astrology and Uranus from the modern astrology. Remember, Uranus was only discovered in 1881, so until then Saturn was the ruler. Both of them are fighting throughout the year of 2021, kind of letting us know or highlighting how we are going to resist this new way of thinking and the old way of thinking. We need to be conscious of that. So if we think about the symbol of Aquarius to start our little story here in this energy, this new energy. So it is the water bearer, so the one that carries the water, although it's an air sign, that distributes the water. So it's very important, this aspect of Aquarius, the distributor. It's all about sharing, about horizontal, about groups, about people. The two levels of water, so the symbol, right? So two waves, two levels. We can think in many different ways because it's a symbol. We can think about levels of consciousness, if you will, but there are many other aspects of the symbol as well. But I would like to highlight the aspect of Aquarius as a distributor. It distributes. That's something to remember. And we have in the universe two kinds of movements. So we have expansion and contraction, which will give us the elementary qualities of hot and cold. And we have fluidity and tension, which will give us the elementary qualities of humid and dry. Those four elementary qualities are the substance, the foundations of all the 12 signs. So astrology is all about nature. It's all about being connected with nature. So let's think about these differences that we're going to face. So we're coming from a Capricorn environment, right? So cold and dry, that's the characteristics of the sign. With a humid contribution. I'm going to explain that because it's interesting. If we think about cold, if you think about us when we are cold, right? So we contract ourselves, right? So it's about being interiorized, withdraw, accumulation. By the way, if you see me looking below here, I have all my presentation, the slides you guys are seeing back and forth. So I kind of reading with you. So reserve, coldness, brain over emotions, right? The reasoning about things. The dry aspect, which is passive with an active support. So it's passionate nature, exaggerated, persistent, tense, inflexible, disciplined. Think about flexibility. If you have a dry piece of wood, let's say, if you try to break it, when it's dry, it's very hard, it's inflexible, right? And it needs to be inflexible. We need inflexibility many times so we can put things steady, right? So all this is a Capricorn, two aspects, elementary aspects of it. If we go to Aquarius, it is hot and humid. So expansiveness and fluidity. So in the hot elementary quality, so it's active, hot, fire, right? The fire sign has this hot component. Energy, liveliness, immediate nature, impulsiveness, initiate things, entrepreneurial spirit, the life desires life, passionate about life, enthusiastic, optimistic. The humid part, which is passive, which is receptive. So it's a soft nature, delicate feelings, dreamer, unstable. Because when you think about imagination, about being receptive, it's not steady, it's not fixed. It's unstable, it's flexible. Contrary to aggression. Again, if we think of the same piece of wood, if it's humid, it's harder to break, right? Because it bends, it's flexible. This humidity aspect allows us to be more together. The same thing when you're doing a cake, for example. You need these humid ingredients to put all the ingredients together. So humidity in astrology allows the connection, allows people to be connected, the energies to interact with each other. So those are the components of Aquarius. We're going to understand that even further. So Aquarius is all about creativity and freedom. Another very important word in Aquarius. Freedom to be yourself, freedom to be authentic. So here I'm quoting an author which I admire a lot, a Brazilian astrologer, Gregorio José Pereira de Queiroz. So he says, with the predominance of the hot over the humid, which is Aquarius, predominantly hot over humid, there is a powerful expansion of the impressions received. A lot of impressions received, right? Very, very open to receiving information. A small perception coming from a fact provokes a strong creative reaction. There are no tension to contain this expansion, reaching the edge of its possibilities. So innovation, credibility, being to the edge, right? There is a search for freedom, for new concepts, and for everything else which suggests an enlargement of limits. So everything that expands, there is no limit to perception, to expand, to leaps of growth in Aquarius. So we are coming from the earth element in Capricorn to an air element in Aquarius. So from structure to freedom, mature and practical world in Capricorn, a relationship world in Aquarius. The concrete toward instead of communication. So Capricorn is all an earth elements about the concrete, reasoning, productivity, maintenance, rigor, being steady, being in control. Whereas in the air element, we have the freedom, relationship, communication, exchange, the mind, creativity, mobility, flexibility. Although I must remember, Aquarius is a fixed sign, can have very fixed ideas when believing something. I'm saying right now, that's the slide here now. So Capricorn is a cardinal sign, so it's an initiator, and Aquarius is a fixed sign, more into putting things into this practice, into letting things to be fixed in one direction, in a mental direction in case of Aquarius. So we're talking about different dialects, right? So from Capricorn to Aquarius, from the structure to disruption from the status quo. Capricorn is all about the status quo, whereas Aquarius is all about disruption from it. The state and politics in Capricorn to culture and ideas in Aquarius. Reason, the state, right, versus the democracy and the collectiveness. Capricorn is all about chronological time, whereas in Aquarius we want to transcend time. From linear to non-linear with leaps of consciousness. That's why it's interesting to know where Aquarius, what part of her chart is ruled by Aquarius. That area is going to have this leap of consciousness with this conjunction. From vertical thinking, power, structure, towards a horizontal thinking, collaboration, the group, the collectiveness. That's an important aspect here. In Capricorn, we are able to generate participation in a process which already exists. Whereas in Aquarius, what we need to generate is the interaction in a process which emerges from the group. That's a very interesting and important part of the story. So we are coming from a world that is given, the rules, the tradition, what is known, right? To a world that is all about co-creation, of getting the group to interact, and we don't know what's going to emerge out of it. So we need to invite people for collaboration in Aquarius. It's not about only come here and participate in something that is already done. We need to invite people to build, to construct, to innovate, to create. That's all about creativity. In Capricorn, we have the reality, a reality shock, a reality standard, and in Aquarius, a creation of a new reality. That's why it's so important, this 20-year period. We are being invited to create and to create together in groups, taking into consideration the whole group, not only one individual, not only one person having the power. From the old to the new, from obeying the rules to rebellion, to rebel against it. That's a shadow part we're going to talk about. So it's all about being against the status quo. That's a lot of Aquarius energy. Slow movements in earth elements to a fast movement in an air element, especially Aquarius. The traditional versus the innovator, the original, being original, giving to the world that part that is only yours, only you can give to the world. The limits, being constrained by the limits in a Capricorn. We saw that a lot in 2020. 2 limits to be overcome. We need to overcome the limits. Vertical versus or horizontal, as we spoke. Seek for safety, whereas in Aquarius are going to seek for authenticity. That's so important. Are you being who you're meant to be? That's a tough question. From stability, steadiness, control, to change things, to alternate reality, even what things that surprise us to be the opposite of what we're thinking. In Capricorn, we are able to invest high in social elevation. It's about social elevation, about growing, rising in society. And in Aquarius, invest high, pays a lot of money, whatever it takes, for freedom. So freedom is a key word in Aquarius. Aquarius is a futurist. So this is a Victor Hugo statement. The future has many names. For the weak, it means the unattainable. For the fearful, it means the unknown. For the courageous, it means opportunity. So we can see that as a very a phase, an age of opportunities for us to create something new, to create something we believe. Remember, when we're talking about this Capricorn energy in 2020, we need to remember always that astrology, more than having 12 signs, it has 6 axes. So if we're talking about Capricorn, we need to talk about the opposite sign, which is Cancer, a sign that was a lot impacted during the last, especially for a few years, but especially 2.5 years ago when Saturn was crossing Capricorn, impacting Cancer by opposition. So it's a water cardinal sign, an initiator, emotions, the domestic, memories, the relationship with kids, vocation, romantic perspective, the attachment to our roots. So it's important to remember that we were brought back home in 2020 to be closer to our families, to rethink the domestic, rethink the environment, home offices, everything was taken back home. So we need to understand what really, we had to rethink what really matters, what makes us happy, what is inside us. So this journey within has a lot to do with Cancer. We can also think of Aquarius from its opposite to understand the period ahead, right? So the opposite sign is Leo, the axis, right? As I was saying. So Leo is all about the self, being recognized by the individual. And Aquarius, the opposite, the fullness, we are complete when we are in community. Power versus people, the monarchy versus democracy in Aquarius. Leo is all about being, having a difference for itself, right? And Aquarius is all about everybody's equal, nobody's different. The individual in Leo, the universal in Aquarius. By the way, bear in mind that no characteristic whatsoever of any sign means good or bad, right? We need the 12 energies. Every energy serves a purpose, right? We also need Leo. We need its very general sign, fire sign, very important. When we are opposing here, it's not good or bad. It's different. That's important to acknowledge and to honor diversity here, because we need this Leo part of us to be individual, to be who we are. But in the opposite side, we also need to have this energy of developing our identity in Leo and serving to a universal purpose in Aquarius. So the axis has to work together, right? Has to be balanced. So this energy to the universal, to the collectiveness. The command in Leo, since it's the king, the monarchy, right? The king of the animal kingdom, right? Leo. So from the command of the power of one to a rebellion of the status quo. Pride, Leo rules the pride, and Aquarius is the opposite. It releases itself to gain freedom. The heart in the body, right? Is ruled by Leo, versus the mind. It's more mind-oriented in Aquarius. In Leo, we centralized power and influence, and in Aquarius, we decentralized. So all these aspects that we need to listen in society and to encourage, we're gonna listen this music, even if we are not conscious about it. This music is gonna play. People asking for more collectiveness, asking for decentralization of power, of delegation of power. So if you are a leader and you try to centralize too much, you're still trying to use command and control, there are good chances that you're not going to succeed in that way during this period, because everybody else is listening to another music. So it's good to give yourself some look within, right, to explore this possibility the best you can. Aquarius is all about authenticity. So that's an Alexander Graham Bell quote, which I love, by the way. Never walk on the traveled path, because it only leads where others have been. So it's all about authenticity, all about innovation, all about creating your own path. So now we have Saturn and Jupiter together, right? As we were explaining. So different purposes again. So Saturn in structure, it has the danger of pessimism. We need to take care of that. Reality, self-demand, economy is more economic, by the way. Contraction, within the limits. It's all about making sure we have the proper foundation, the proper floor to step in, right? Jupiter is known as the big benefic, the great benefic. So it's about optimism, faith, self-confidence, knowledge, exaggeration. We all have the shadow parts, right? It exaggerates, it expands everything, the good and the bad. Expansion beyond boundaries. So it rules the overseas, how you can enlarge your perspective of the world, knowledge, regulation, all of that is Jupiter. So they're going to be together, right? In Aquarius. So before we move forward, the Aquarius shadow that we need to pay attention to is some aspects that we can think about. Excess of individuality, because it's all about freedom, it's all about being authentic, about being who you are. There's a high level of individuality in Aquarius that we need to take care of. The mind over heart, technocracy, because technology is going to grow even more. I know when I say these, I think, oh my God, it's already so developed, but I tend to think it's still really baby steps, because we're going to have a big boom in technology this decade, not only because of this conjunction right now in Aquarius, but because in 2023 and 24, Pluto is going to enter Aquarius, and then we have no escape. It's going to be progress, and it's going to be this very Aquarian decade ahead of us. So we need to take care to what extent we want to be technological, especially because it's very mental, can be individualistic. So all of that are things for us to think about. The excess of distribution. It's all about distributing, which is great, it's democratic, it includes everybody, but we need to learn discernment because it's a lot available. Rebellion. Aquarius loves rebellion, loves to fight for something, and the status quo tends to be something that an Aquarian energy rejects. So an excess of that can be dangerous. Excessively search for the different. So it's another energy of the sign. So whatever is different, whatever is different from the mass attracts Aquarius. So everything excess can be a danger. So we need to take care of that. And also, if we don't create a separativeness due to the extreme search for affinity groups. Diversity is a key word, and I think we're going to see a lot of advancement, which is great again. So all the minorities are going to speak loud. What we need to take care of, not only with minorities, but with affinity groups, is that we don't separate ourselves too much, right? So again, everything in excess could be a danger. So some shadow aspects for us to think about. We also have the myth to inspire us. So Saturn is Chronos, the god of time. So that's why it's all about structure. It's all about what lasts with time. So we have the word chronology, or something that's chronic. It comes from this mythological source of Chronos being this god of time. And Zeus, Jupiter, is Jupiter was Zeus in the Greek mythology. Also about the one that actually took over the power of the father, right? So it's father and son together. Saturn being the father and Zeus being Kronos and Zeus being the son. So Zeus took over the power of the father. So it's all about expanding, and Kronos and Saturn is about taking care and control of the power. So they are together in a new social order. So time to expand the structure. Expansion is a product of work and effort. Maturing what needs to be expanded. So some of the messages behind. Renovation of power of social structures. Power changing hands completely. We're going to see a lot of that. Changing hands all over. Regulations being reviewed. Knowledge, the way we learn, the way we teach. We saw that a lot during the pandemic. The schools being challenged a lot. What we understand by religion, faith, society, the new collective view of the world, more into progress. Some tendencies that we can expect, an optimism that needs to have some direction, needs to have some foundation. Lasting expansion with responsibility, something that comes, an expansion that comes to last, but with responsibility. Expansion requires maturing things, maturing situations. In order to structure, we need to amplify our horizons. Success comes with effort or a result of effort that was already done, something that got matured. Exaggeration needs to be directed and controlled. Reality check with our goals, our long-term goals, our objectives. Is that real? Is that doable? Expansion of the foundations where we feel safe, where we stand on, so we can expand where we are facing, where we believe we are safe. Hope based on reality. Reality faced with faith and optimism. Better work goals that could last and that have foundation, as we spoke already. So there is a commitment to the collective, to collaboration, to collaborative power. It's about the ordinary man, the common man having a voice, progress, new consciousness. So if we think about the last time they were in Aquarius together, I mentioned in the beginning they were together in 1405. What happened back then? So if we think about that, we're going to find Johannes Gutenberg, which was a big change and progress at the time and still today, because Gutenberg invented the mechanical movable type printing, the printing press around 1439, around that, and his technology spread quickly. If we think about, that's a big step change in terms of distributing information. It changed completely. The fact that we can have a printing press, that we can share information that used to be only among a few people, a small group of people, and then all of a sudden we are able to distribute. That changes completely the reality, which played at the time a key role in the development of Renaissance, Reformation, the Age of Enlightenment. One very famous achievement of Gutenberg was the Bible, the 42-line Bible. It could be spread. So that's the distributor part of Aquarius that's very important, something to think of, that changes completely how we relate to the world if we have more information. That's this distribution age that is now going further, a next step, right? After the 600 years now, we are now able to do distribution again. So it's all about progress. The most important thing is this, to be able to, at any moment, sacrifice what we are for what we could become. So something that we can build and become. In this distributive movement, we have something to correlate here. So if we think that there was one inspiration that also has to do with Aquarius that I want to talk about, linking with this distribution that happened with Gutenberg in 1439, around that, is the network theory. The network theory was created by Paul Barron, a young guy who worked for Hand Corporation in Santa Monica. And in 1964, a year which, by the way, Saturn was also in Aquarius, he wrote this paper called On Distributed Communications. He was hired, his company was hired, and Paul Barron was invited to think of a way that the nets, the internets, and the net and the networks would be less vulnerable in case of a war or in case something went really bad. And he was able to think about that and map the networks, the internet networks, which also applies to all other networks we can think about. So he came up with three different networks: a centralized one, a decentralized one, which is, let's say, multi-centers, and a distributed net. So of course he recommended, and it's easy to think that the centralized one is the most vulnerable because it has one center, and if the center is reached by a war or by something, it destroys everything, right? Because it's too centralized. On a decentralized model, which we are all, by the way, on in terms of the way our society is organized, the way companies are organized, in multi-centers, right? So you have these departments, you have the boss and a team. So all our society has examples of decentralized models where you have a group managed by one central point, even the networks in itself, the physical networks. And it's less vulnerable than the centralized ones. And we are now, because of social media, because of technology, because of internet, we're heading into, we're already there in some aspects, but I believe in our minds we're not yet, to a distributed net, which allows us to not have the centers and being able to spread ourselves and talk and communicate much easier and much faster. So if we think about what happened in 2020 and what's going to happen from now on with this conjunction in Aquarius, we have a great opportunity to step into these distributed networks. So 2020, in my opinion, it actually hit those centers of power in our decentralized or multi-centralized way of seeing society, of seeing companies, of seeing the way we are organized. So it still implies a level of command and control, someone in charge, otherwise it doesn't organize itself. Whereas in the distributed network, it is believed that the net organizes itself by itself. It doesn't need a manager. It doesn't need someone looking after it. It is self-controlled. So I believe that we are going and we are having this opportunity in Aquarius to go into this distributed mindset. If we think of this network theory phenomenon, and by the way, I'm not an expert on that, I'm just correlating the facts here, and I think that is, I encourage, and I would like myself to study even further, that for us to think about that, because this network phenomenon allows some events, some phenomenons, right, to happen. So the higher the distribution, higher is the connectivity. And if we have more connectivity, we have, of course, more ways of connecting, which in the distributed network it happens. With more ways of connections, we interact more. And the more we interact, more things emerge, which we don't know now, by the way. We just know with the connection that something emerges. There is a higher interactivity. And with these things happening in a distributed network, there's some events that comes with it. The first is clustering, right? So whatever interacts gets closer. So since we need less control, less power, and the net is spread, and it's a big ecosystem that regulates itself, we are able to cluster, we are able to interact, we get closer and having more chances of interaction. Another aspect that happens a lot in nature is the swarming event. So collective intelligence together. So we see that with birds, insects, fish, they swarm and they create one collective intelligence that we can benefit from a lot in Aquarius. We have another event, which is cloning, imitation, connection with whoever knows. Because the net is spread and we don't have those points of power and regulation, we are able to spread ourselves and to connect quicker, which leads to the fourth event, which is crunching, reducing the size of the world. We need less people to get in contact with whoever we are trying to talk. So we are more likely to have a smaller world, a more connected world with that phenomenon happening. So I believe we are having now a great opportunity to develop, to encourage, to foster, not only with technology that we already have, a distributed way of seeing the world, but in our minds, because we're still working on a decentralized model in our heads, but we are heading into a distributed model, especially after 2020. And I believe when I said in the beginning that the two rulers of Aquarius, Saturn and Uranus, are going to fight in 2021, it can be that there is this battle between, that's the main aspect, the battle between the tradition and the innovation. So we are still resisting this new way of thinking, and talking about the networks is one example that we will see that happening during this decade. So some images about the swarming. So what we can expect from this new phase: the power changing hands, as we spoke, collaborative economy, wins faster what is done by a group, by people that collaborate together, a collective mind. Increase in humanitarian views and perspectives. Structural change in education, how it's faced, applied, done, etc. Unprecedented technological progress. Individual space being overvalued, so it's very individualistic perspective. People seeking for an authentic lifestyle. That's nice. I think that's important. Traditional hierarchy loses power towards what the group thinks. Distribution and delegation of authority, the belief that everybody's equal, that everybody has something to contribute. Rebellion against power and status quo. Lower tolerance for rigidity, so inflexibility of not willing to experiment the new. And the visceral importance of discernment with so much information and technology available to us. We need to make this choice. What are you going to feed your mind with? What are you going to believe in? How are you going to encourage your consciousness to go to a different level? So we are talking about the two social planets. So they are between what we call personal planets, that talks about our personality and the way we interact with the world. So they are in between what we call transpersonal planets. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto is talking about us being more than human, transhuman, being collective. It inspires, after Saturn, the inspiration is that we really look after the collectiveness. So those two social planets, which makes the bridge in the sky for us to move one step ahead in this very progressive sign of Aquarius. The age of creating new ecosystems. So the power of the ecosystems, when we were talking about the networks theory, it's all about empowering this big net we are in. We are in this huge net. We're not alone. And I think we can benefit from understanding and taking advantage and seeing less the other as a competitor or someone who's going to steal from me or, you know, take my space. Whereas we can be this collective body all together. It's possible. Nature does that. The birds know how to do it. We should know how to do it too. We have this humanitarian awakening with, I'm calling here Uranian awakening, just a curiosity, a fun fact about Uranus, which is the traditional ruler of Aquarius. Uranus is really almost in the horizontal. I'm missing the words here in English, but you guys understood. So if you think about the angle, right, of the planet, Uranus is 97% like this, right? So what is the invitation, astronomically speaking, is that you see things differently, to see it in another direction, right? So whereas everybody's looking this direction, Uranus is looking that direction, which is an Aquarian way. If everybody is going one direction, I go the opposite direction because I want the new. I want another perspective. I want the unseen to aggregate, to innovate, to go beyond, right? To give these leaps of creativity and consciousness. So just another fun fact and inspiration about the astronomy behind. And I want to finish up here with you guys, encouraging you to think about your personal entrepreneurship, right? What your personal journey. So start your new order, your reset. Take this chance of a reset, completely reset. So do not waste your singularity, your unique. What you have to say, only you can say. If you don't say, nobody else will, right? Search your own truth. Free yourself from whatever or whoever is holding you back to grow. You are here for a purpose. Don't allow anyone nor anything stop you. Choose your mind content. Think about that. We're going to have a lot of content. Choose how to feed your mind. This air cycle of 200 years is going to be a lot about mind and communication and exchange. You need to choose. Make a choice. How you're feeding your mind, with what kind of thoughts. And I'm not saying all of us have bad thoughts. It's normal, it's human, but we can work on it. We can put our stations in our mind in a different level if we can, if we want to. Faith, optimism, courage, you are ready. Believe it, believe in you, believe your goals, believe your projects. And that's what I had to share with you. I hope it was useful. It was not the intention to be too short because I was going to explain in more detail. And I want to wish you a great reset. Really take advantage, an amazing time in Aquarius. And I will sure come back for us to discuss further those transits and those periods ahead of us. Okay? Take care. Enjoy. Have a lovely new year. See you around. Thanks for being here.